and welcome to the Hoffline, your online hotline, direct line to the women-only attorneys at Hoffimer Family Law. My name is Katie Carter, and I'm so glad you're here. I am here today with Kristen Gallath, who is a friend and colleague of mine. She currently works as a paralegal in our office, and I wanted to ask her a little bit about her practice so that she could talk more about the role of a paralegal and what they actually do. But the interesting thing about Chris, and part of the reason that I invited her here today, is that she's not just a paralegal. She is an attorney and has been licensed in 2 different states, New Jersey and Hawaii. So she is a real asset to our firm and someone who brings really incredible insight to the cases that she works on. So anyway, after that long introduction, I'm happy to say, welcome, Chris. Thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So this leads me to my first question, Chris, which is, what would you say to a client who says, I only want the attorney working on my case?
I would say you don't want the attorney only working on your case. The paralegal is an important part of your case. We do a lot of the background work, but we also are the ones who you will touch base with on a daily basis or whenever you call in and answer your questions to the best of our ability and then get with the attorney about, answering your questions. So we're almost like we triage your case and then we get you to the attorney when it's actually appropriate for or needed for you to talk to them.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, I think it's important to point out, like, it's not really like, you're there to serve as a barrier, but the paralegal is the one who is, in a lot of cases, building relationships with clients and helping them make sure, like, as they're going through some of the more difficult parts of their case, that they have someone there to hear them and to validate them and to let them know sort of where this falls in terms of, of a level of importance, what's going to make a difference strategically, but also paralegals tend to bill at a significantly lower hourly rate. So
absolutely,
working with a paralegal can save you a lot of money. And not even just that, right? I mean, almost everybody's worried about the price of a divorce, especially because we can't estimate it ahead of time. But a paralegal working on your case is going to, get things done by the right person, right? Like, attorneys are great in court and doing all of the things that lead up to court, but there are so many things that we don't do. I really struggle with, setting motions and knowing who to call and what day what court is hearing what things, and I can always get answers from the paralegals for the things that I don't know.
Yeah, the paralegals are the ones who know all that information. Not that the attorneys don't, but the paralegals know, what court, who to contact at what court to get, a hearing set or what, days certain hearings are heard. So they really do have a lot of the knowledge that the attorneys don't. The attorneys have the legal knowledge, but the paralegals have a lot of the practical knowledge about the individual court systems.
Yeah, and the relationships, not just with the clients, but with the other important people, like the clerks in court and the other paralegals at different offices. And those relationships get a lot of stuff done too, in terms of getting things scheduled and keeping cases moving forward on a reasonable timeline. And I mean, you probably have a lot of friends at the other offices too, because you talk to them so frequently about, cases and getting things done.
Yeah, I really try to keep it cordial with the other paralegals, because I think if you have a relationship where you're always mean or, tough with them, you're not going to get as far as if you keep things cordial. Then you can get dates set and hearings heard and phone calls scheduled a lot quicker than if it's you have a bad relationship with them.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I totally agree. My mom always says, you catch more flies with honey. And I think that's true too, and definitely a way that I try to practice myself. That leads me into my second question for you, Chris, which is, can you tell me more about the role of a paralegal in a family law case? Like, where is that division of labor happening? And you work with Shira Harrell in our office. What are the jobs that you're doing versus the jobs that Shira is doing?
So I do the drafting of pleadings and sending out emails and correspondence. Reviewing and preparing discovery. I review the discovery to see what's missing or to see what information I can see when I review the discovery. And then I pass it off to Shira for a more in-depth look at certain parts of those discovery for what we need to get more information on or what we need to talk to the client about.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I usually don't work quite as closely with a paralegal, so it's not something that I have as much experience with, but I'm always interested in how this, how this balance is happening and what that looks like for, for day-to-day life and what clients can expect so that you can help prep them. I know to some degree it's an individual balance. Some attorneys are, drafting their whole separation agreement from the beginning, and others have a paralegal take a stab at it to begin with and then go in and edit from that point forward. Some are drafting motions, some are doing more of the correspondence and scheduling, but it definitely depends a lot. And I think it's really important not to understate the importance of that role. You're talking about discovery, which is one of the most important points of a case, where you're kind of gathering all the details about, what's most important and what the theory of your case is going to be. I think a lot of women are often frustrated that, when you go to court or when you're negotiating a case, you can't get in necessarily as much detail as you might want. A lot of nuance is going to be lost in a case. But what we're trying to do is come up with a theory of the case that makes sense, come up with a story, not a story in the sense that it's fabricated, but a story, a narrative that makes sense from beginning to end, that draws the attention to the most important points. And so, I would say, based on, the way you characterize your role, Chris, is that you're kind of like the investigator there, trying to find those pieces that are going to help you make sense of the case and come up with a coherent narrative that you can share with the judge, that you can, argue in a judicial settlement conference, so that, it all kind of comes together and the client gets what she needs at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a perfect segue into the third question and kind of what we were talking about before we jumped on the camera here. But can you tell me about a case that you worked on where you feel like it really made a difference? Your role made a difference?
I don't think there's any particular case that I feel like my role made a difference. But I get very excited when I'm reviewing discovery. I like to review discovery. When I find little breadcrumbs or little pieces of information that lead us down a different path, and then we can investigate that information further. And then those breadcrumbs might, make a difference in how the case is, plays out in the end, because we've been able to find a hidden account, or we've been able to find where money has been diverted to, or something like that. It usually deals with money. It's usually a bank account or, a financial account, but that's what I like the best about doing this work.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's important to kind of point out too. Shira is a certified financial planner, so a lot of her cases are focused on complicated equitable distribution. And a big question that we get a lot of times from women coming in is, what do I do if he's hiding money? What if there's an account that I don't know about? And so, it sounds one of the many hats that Chris is wearing, and she's being really modest, saying that she can't think of a case that's made a difference in the outcome, but being able to find that money, to see where a lot of times money's leaving traces, right? If it was ever in a bank account anyway, as long as it's not hidden under a mattress somewhere, then there are bits and pieces we can put together to kind of figure out what's going on. And Absolutely. a lot of that comes through in the discovery. And sometimes, I'm sure you can talk about it, Chris, but sometimes we get just like bins and bins and bins of documents, sometimes sorted, sometimes not sorted, but working through that and then being able to pull out the most important pieces for Shira to focus on as she begins to, prep a case for court, or prep a brief, or to get ready to go to a judicial settlement conference, that can make all the difference. And that can be the difference between a client getting a portion of an account or not. And it's a huge difference.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. And it might be, something that the husband isn't giving to us, and then we know we need to issue subpoenas or, go down a different path to try to find that information. So
it's the very important work. But I just wanted to say, Chris, thank you so much for all that you do in so many ways. I mean, you and the others are just glue that keeps the office running. And I think that's underestimated and often unappreciated. But it's such important work, and it does make a huge difference in the outcome of a case. Just being able to put those pieces together in a way that makes sense, to be able to, create something from thousands of pages of seemingly unconnected paperwork or text messages. I mean, I think that sometimes the financial statements are the more confusing ones to read and to see where money has gone and where these accounts have changed names over years and years and years. But being able to make sense of that is tedious, but also can be incredibly rewarding work.
Yes, I
But
would agree.
anyway, do you have anything else that you wanted to add about your role and what you
I
do?
can't think of anything.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. I think this was really helpful. And, again, we appreciate the work that you do. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. We have tons of information on our website at hoflaw.com. That's HOFLAW.com, including 4 free books, a number of free reports for download, thousands and thousands of pages of blogs. So if you want to get more information on a particular topic or get more in depth about, any specific issue that you might be facing, definitely check there first. But again, thank you so much for coming and thank you for being here. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you.